Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna talk whether we have been bamboozled by Kabam. Now, very quickly, what do I mean here by bamboozled? I want to put out there the situation that we were, I think, a year and a half in, when Kabam basically announced that they will be tweaking, changing any new champion about 6 months after they're released, and everybody was outraged because they said that some champions will get a tune up and some champions will get a tune down. The more kind of like highlighted examples here would have been Namor got a tune down, Call Obsidian got switched about, and some other changes there. Ebony Maw pretty much got a buff. But the point is, it caused a huge outrage because player base felt immensely insecure about acquiring new champions, about which champions to rank. There was a definitive change coming, and they knew that for a fact. And they also knew that for a fact that not all of these changes are going to be positive, and if a champion looks great from the get-go, it might be pointless to acquire this champion because they could potentially change him down 6 months down the line. And that was a very big topic of conversation. And ultimately, by the looks of it, it does seem that Kabam has abandoned that idea. Or have they? I think here, they're kind of working, instead of from top down, from the more recent champions, and as every new champion is released, by the looks of it, they have just switched it about, and they're working from bottom up. By reworking these older champions now on their schedule. And don't get me wrong, I like the program overall as a whole, up until now. Now I'm definitely having a lot more mixed feelings towards this entire buff program, because we need to establish what is a buff. And buff, as far as I'm concerned, means making something better. It doesn't mean making something different. It means increasing the abilities that champion is already capable of doing, and it doesn't mean taking away something from champion in order to give him something else. It doesn't mean we're gonna take Iron Fist and gonna turn him into a Black Panther-alike champion. It means if you're gonna buff Armor Fist, it's still gonna be based thereabouts on similar mechanics, or maybe completely new mechanics, but at the very least, significantly better and more, not less or different. Now, let me take it blunt. I don't think we can say, with the change of Hood, with the change of Massacre, with the change of Civil Warrior, where all three of those champions are actually losing some abilities. I don't think I would want to actually use the word nerf, therefore I will not. But I also don't want to refer to the process that's happening to them as a buff, because only some aspects of a champion are getting buffed, some aspects of the champions are getting nerfed to the ground or removed entirely. In all three instances, Hood, Civil Warrior, and Massacre are gaining more damage, but they are losing some kits of their utility. Massacre's Disorient effectively will be significantly less effective now, because you will only trigger it on a level 1 now if opponent is not incinerated, which opponent should be most of the time. Therefore, in most of the situations where you're playing Massacre right, you're not going to have access to the Disorient anymore. In case of Civil Warrior, yes, he's going to gain crap ton of Furies, but they took away his ability accuracy reduction. And perhaps most significantly and most importantly, in case of Hood, he's losing his Fate Seal and a bunch of other abilities. Actually, Cat Murdoch here on Twitter, this tweet has gone out and about, and there are a lot of people very upset about it. But let's just see what are the main problem points here. They are removing the SP2 Hex Seal. That's the biggest problem. They're also decreasing the stagger duration, and that combination with the removal of Hex Seal pretty much destroys his ability to counter buffs, which up until now was the one thing that he shined at. His damage was never the greatest, but he was very good at countering buffs. Like in my yesterday's video, I explained that staggers worked beautifully, for instance, to counter Medusa, but at a time when you have to bait out a special attack or whatever else, some buffs do squeeze through, And at that point is when you use your level 2 and nullified everything, and you maintain control of the fight. Now you will not be able to do that anymore, nor you will be able to control any permanent buffs, and so on and so forth. Basically, any buff that does go through a stagger stays there. And you have no other way in the new kit that Hood will have to deal with it. And there are also other changes: the removal of debuff passive refresh on heavy, the decrease on invisibility effectiveness against multi-hit projectile special attacks. Now, again, invisibility change can be discussed, because ultimately I do think he gets a better invisibility change, but if you have ranked up Hood and have planned to use him to phase through projectiles, then this is affecting you negatively, yes. And ultimately, I didn't initially realize how big of a deal it is, and perhaps I should have. But as I was going to bed last night, and I was thinking about it, and I felt more and more and more uncomfortable about it. Because, again, if Kabam said we'll change around every single champion in the contest to our liking, and we're going to take key pieces of decently used champions away, everybody would be outraged. Everybody would up in the arms, and we would have a revolution here. Now, they never said that. They said we're going to be buffing, reworking, upgrading. They used all these good and positive terms. But in this case, for part of the player base, they are completely destroying a champion that they love. Because Hood, it's not Groot, it's not Iron Patriot. People actually have invested, used, and liked Hood as a champion. Much like Massacre, for instance. Why? Well, because, as I mentioned yesterday, he's very, very important synergy for Ghost. So he often found your place on the team regardless. And plenty of people have taken Hood to rank 5 or rank 2 as a 6-star or something like that. Even if it's partially because he's a Ghost synergy piece, but they still relied and or ranked him for his current pieces of utility. And he's not going to be able to take a whole bunch of fights that he did before. Like, I don't think he's going to be able to do the champion fight. Now, Hood was never the best option for champion, but he was always, from the very beginning, as one of the solid options to defeat 6.2 champion. He's not going to be able to defeat this 7.13 Vision Arcus and a bunch of other fights. And now we need to ask ourselves, are we okay with that? Are we okay potentially ranking up a mid-tier champion? I don't know. Are you okay ranking up Gwenpool today specifically for her ability to bypass defensive ability reduction and perhaps specifically to take out Thing bosses in Alliance War? If a week, a month, 2 months, 3 months later, Kabam says we're going to be buffing Gwenpool, and perhaps she will get a ton of new cool abilities that for many people will be better. But if you're going to take Gwenpool up to defeat a Thing boss in Alliance War, for example, and she loses that ability. Let's say she loses defensive ability accuracy reduction in favor from a bunch of different abilities. Maybe she gets Shock now, that's completely useless against Thing. Maybe she gets some weird Nullify ability that's completely useless against Thing. And ultimately she's unable to answer the problems that you had ranked that champion up for. Are we okay with that? Because I sure as fuck am not. Now, what I see with Hood's rework here is Kabam wanted to add some very new, cool, fancy mechanics about his damage, and then they apparently added too much damage and say Hood would be OP. So to me, an obvious solution here was, if you wanted to make Hood a better champion, you'd increase his damage maybe not to the level where he's OP, but just make it somewhat better, slightly better. But let him do everything that he has been doing up until now good enough. And that is the big problem here, because, for instance, they did that to us before to a degree, even with Magneto buff, but nobody cared because Magneto was amazing, right? The one change they did to Red Magneto, a big change that they did to Red Magneto, is they took his ability away to tank special 3s. But they added so much extra stuff to Magneto that nobody literally cared. But now when we're looking at these smaller reworks, when they're taking away abilities from better champions that are more important and giving back less, at this point, I don't think anybody should be okay with that. I don't think Kabam should be allowed to do this. And I can very well understand why many people are extremely outraged, especially if you're one of those people who liked Hood up until now. And again, I'm not trying to say at all that the idea of buffing all champions is bad. Hell no, I love it. It's one of my favorite things currently in the game. But changing a champion's base abilities and what he's able to do is not buffing it. It's making a different champion. It's having different Hood in the game. And yeah, I don't know how better I can put this. I think we need to agree with Kabam on some sort of compromise set of rules here. Kabam are obviously welcome, and we all love when they make old champions better. But situations like this cannot happen because it's just, again, unfair and intellectually dishonest. It's deceiving to call it a buff when it's a buff to a certain aspect of the champion. Yes, you buff the champion's damage, but you absolutely cannot take away champion's main utilities. Civil Warrior, for example, nobody's outraged by that because Civil Warrior wasn't really used, and that ability accuracy reduction was one of the cooler things about his kit. But I'm also not quite okay with them taking that away. I'd be much more at peace if they just didn't give him as much damage, maybe, if they think he's going to be too OP. So yes, I do not believe that Kabam should significantly alter, or rather say remove, utility from champions that they are reworking. In my opinion, in an ideal world, any champion that they are reworking should in theory be able to do any single meaningful fight after the buff that they were able to do before the buff. And that is the one key requirement that I think Kabam should always uphold when they are changing these champions. They cannot take away main pieces of champion's utility, and they cannot completely redesign the kit of a champion where if people have used that champion for very specific important things in the contest, where he's simply not viable for what he was before. But yes, that is it for now. Let me know what you guys think about this kind of like twist, change / turn into Kabam's buffing idea. I all of a sudden feel a lot more reserved about this entire buff program. I all of a sudden like it a lot less. And I all of a sudden look at it as something that is a lot more sinister and more complicated to discuss than it was before. Because yes, they're not giving you better Hood. They're giving you a different Hood. They're giving you alternate reality version where Hood perhaps is a good damage champion with a relatively shit utility. Or maybe good utility, but it doesn't matter. Fact of the matter is, it's different. But that is it. Let me know what you guys think, and what should we do as a community, if anything. Perhaps you are perfectly fine, which is alright, again. That is your opinion, but please do let me know what is your opinion. Either way, that is it for today, and I am going to catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information